Life of Christ, Cycle of Life, invites us to pause and to pray. As it narrates the story of Jesus Christ, we are reminded of our own human journeys as well. Not surprisingly, the creation of this major work is a story of its own. It's the story of my dad, artist Philip Rickey, who, through his language of standing stones, has created an environment that is both sacred and at one with nature. It's the story of Notre Dame and the university's vision to breathe life into a small, underused patch of land that had formerly been an ash dump on the edge of campus. And it's a story of collaboration. The magic that happens when dedicated people from all walks of life come together under the guidance of a master sculptor. It took nearly 4 years to complete Life of Christ, Cycle of Life, the centerpiece of the Charles B. Hayes Family Sculpture Park at the University of Notre Dame. The project was a huge undertaking, involving 7 episodes of Christ's life and 100 tons of stone. Just as many voices come together in a choir to create the perfect harmony, many people had to work together to complete Life of Christ. For Philip, the beginning of a major work like Life of Christ involves research, sketches, models, and more sketches. His drawings and models seemed to fill the whole house. They were everywhere, covering the dining room table and taped to the walls. Work like this was not new to Philip, who had established himself as a modern-day standing stone artist with works like the Wellstone Memorial in Eveleth, Minnesota, and Minnesota Suite at the University of Minnesota. At Notre Dame, the land set aside for the sculpture park was untamed, very unlike the rest of the highly organized campus. My dad's goal was to create a connection to the earth, to the roots of our Christian faith, and to our archetypal need to place a mark on the wild landscape. The exhibition returns a landfill to the natural landscape that existed before the university was founded. And the artworks, Life of Christ most specifically, reflect humanity's universal desire to reclaim its original nature through spiritual transcendence. As Philip was busy in Minnesota, working on his plans and drawings for Life of Christ, a landscape architecture team from Michael Van Valkenburg Associates was busy in New York City with their own planning for the landforms and plantings in the entire sculpture park. It took months of discussions and compromises to design the ideal location within the sculpture park for Life of Christ.
It's always my goal to develop and maintain positive relationships, even when there are challenges. I listen. I try to understand. It's in my nature as I work with different people to learn their strengths and allow them to do their jobs without feeling like my way is the only way. I always try to remain flexible and hope to expect that flexibility from other contractors and designers. Having respect for one another means the end result is so much better.
With the final sketch in hand, my dad embarked on a trip to Washington State to hand-select the stone for Life of Christ. The basalt columns he chose are 25 to 12 million years old. Each has its own voice and individual character and plays a specific role in Life of Christ. Once the columns arrived in Lake Elmo, Minnesota, the hard work began, shaping the massive stones. Simply moving them was a challenge.
As an example, when one of my major stones broke, I wasn't sure what to do. I contacted sculptor friends in Norway for ideas and then decided I might have to hire someone in St. Cloud to fix it, which would have been very expensive. But then I talked to Mark. "Oh no, I can do that," he said. Mark is always able to figure out the problem, even if he has to build the equipment needed to fix it. The mended break in the stone ended up as an interesting design element, and I actually prefer it that way.
Visitors to Life of Christ will recognize which stones represent Jesus because they are polished, as compared to the natural stone used for other characters in the narrative. Each Christ figure needed to be polished by hand for a more authentic appearance. But hand polishing takes time, and soon my father realized he was going to need additional help. He reached out to his good friend David Cornish, who worked by his side for the rest of the project. He also brought in a young artist, Jacob Allers-Hatley, and my childhood friend Zoe Kustritz to help. Then I came home from New York City and joined the crew. We worked 8 hours a day through the hot summer of 2016. We all learned a lot about patience, and my dad says he learned about letting go.
It was so satisfying to see each of them start with no knowledge of working with stone, and I know it's pretty monotonous. It seemed like every day all we were doing was making dust. I had 5 different people, all polishing. At a certain point I realized, each person will produce a different look. But that's okay. On a project of this scale, you need to learn to let go. There's going to be a diversity of surfaces, techniques, and styles.
Finally, the stones were ready, and there was the rush to get everything set for their move to the sculpture park. While all that polishing and fabrication was going on back in Minnesota, Mark Weaver and his team from R&R Excavating had been busy moving dirt and rocks and casting concrete footings in South Bend to prepare the space for Life of Christ. It was a huge undertaking and an evolving process, one that required patience from all sides, artists, landscape architects, and contractors, especially when problems arose. Sometimes a design seems hard and fast on paper, but from a practical standpoint, things might need to change, like when the rocks you are working with are 50% larger than they are on the blueprint, or when it's discovered that the native oak trees on the land are unhealthy and need to be removed.
Here's how I work with all my contractors. I see every person as a collaborator instead of someone who is working for me. It's my MO. Everything transpires from that MO of deep mutual respect and a desire to listen and learn. I think it's important to get out of the way, but pay attention. I respect that other people are experts in what they do, and I let them do their jobs with gentle guidance.
When my dad and David arrived in South Bend, work was happening all around them. Mark Weaver and his crew moved earth and rocks, while Acorn Landscaping, led by Jan Alvarez, was busy planting trees, shrubs, wild grasses, and flowers. They worked for weeks during sunshine and rain, painstakingly placing each of the stone columns. They lifted the heaviest pieces by crane, the largest ones weighing in at 11,000 pounds, until finally all 7 episodes were complete. The landscape will grow and change as it matures over the years. The trees will get taller, and each spring the flowers will grow up, signifying the resurrection. There will be moments along the path that are open to the sky, and there will be moments where you are hugged by the topography and have shelter from the tree canopy.
Life of Christ, Cycle of Life involved thousands of hours of my own work, as well as conversations, compromises, design, and indeed heavy labor from many different people, all with unique skills and talents. But it's the feeling of being there that we want people to remember as they visit the site. It's my wish that the artwork will envelop and hold visitors within the park's beautiful surrounding hills, grasses, and trees, allowing them to drift into nature and perhaps hear the whisper of Christ's voice among the stones.